Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is David Lisson. So in case you don't know me, I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New York. I'm also a life coach and a meditation and mindfulness instructor. So I haven't made a video in a while because I've been busy on intensive meditation retreat. So I thought of sharing a bit about my own experience on retreat, both as a teacher and as a student. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what is an intensive meditation retreat, well, firstly, these kinds of activities can differ depending on the tradition. I only have most of my experience within the Buddhist tradition of meditation retreats and within the Chan and Zen schools. There are other schools, of course, that have their own retreats. They may use the same word. So depending on the place that you go, a meditation retreat can be intensive or it can be more relaxed. Some more relaxed retreats allow talking. Some are silent. And you may find that there's a little bit of meditation, there's a little bit of walking, there's maybe some discussion activities, there may be quite a bit of free time where you can read, kind of do whatever you want, and then join the group activities again. Those kinds of retreat, I would say, are less intensive because there's just much more freedom to do what you feel is comfortable, to do what you like to do. There's silence, there's communication. What we call intensive retreats, let's say in the tradition of the Dharma drum lineage, which is the tradition that I'm a teacher in, the word intense means that we minimize distraction as much as possible so that we can completely be with ourselves. And what do I mean by that? So when we sit with ourselves in silence. We're fully aware of our body, how we feel, what we're thinking, and we just don't pay attention to anything else. We learn a method of how to be with ourselves in a way that's relaxed and comfortable internally. So although internally we're relaxed, the environment has strict rules and guidelines to prevent us from being distracted. So in addition to silence, where we don't talk at all, the only time we talk is if we have an interview with the teacher, or maybe we need to communicate briefly with other people who are doing a chore, so we need to coordinate a little bit. Apart from that, there's no talking. Complete silence. There are usually two periods a day where the teacher will give instruction for 30 to 45 minutes. And during that time, as a student, we just absorb. We just listen and try to apply the instruction in the following silent activities. In addition to silence, we don't use our phone. We don't read anything. We don't write anything. We just don't do anything other than the very simple activities that are set throughout the day. And there's a rough schedule on these kind of retreats in the Dharma drum lineage. Again, I can't speak for other retreats, but we have sitting meditation, walking, gentle exercise, what we call work practice, or just doing chores to keep the place tidy. For example, after a meal, we do dishes, we sweep the floor, wipe the tables clean, tidy up the meditation hall, clean the dorms. So this is work practice. And what else do we have? That's pretty much it. Eating, sleeping, and This very simple schedule allows a person to completely put aside all of the distractions of daily life, including, of course, work, but even social distractions, where we may use up a lot of our time socializing in a way that's maybe not so helpful, not so useful, and it may scatter our mind or make us even more busy mentally. So a retreat schedule and the guidelines completely simplify day-to-day life so that we can concentrate, so that we can just be with ourselves in a very relaxed and calm way. So my teacher, the late Chan Master Sheng Yen, he would often say that an intensive retreat is like a date with yourself. Time to put aside everything and just experience what it's like to be in your body, to experience what it's like to be in your mind, to experience what it's like just to sit there with a relaxed body and mind, but it's not a relaxed, lazy kind of attitude, but it's an attitude of being fully present with ourselves, to experience what we do with our body and mind moment to moment. So when we have this appointment with ourselves, we discover what our condition is like. So, for example, what could our condition be like when we show up to retreat? Well, we may find that we're quite exhausted from the busyness, hecticness of daily life. So for many people, the first few days of retreat can be a bit tough because we have to adjust to a new schedule. And on the intensive retreats, we often set the time very early. So on the last retreat I went to, we woke up at 4:30 and we went to sleep at 10 p.m. And that may sound really super early for some of you, but actually after a couple days it becomes, quite comfortable. And we make use of the whole day that way. We don't waste time sleeping more than we need. But in the beginning, it can be a tough transition. So we may discover that we're fatigued. And so for the first part of retreat, a lot of it is resting and not necessarily sleeping, but learning how to be restful in each activity. And part of being restful comes from being relaxed, letting go of the unnecessary tension in the body, as well as letting go of the unnecessary tension brought about by anxiety about the future or regretting the past. A lot of the tendencies we have in daily life, kind of like in daily life when we're sitting down, maybe we're thinking about the next thing, either the next activity, the next day, the next week, the next years of our life. On retreat, we completely let go of the past and future and just experience what it's like to be with ourselves in each moment, in each activity. So part of retreat is finding balance in rest and activity, balance in stillness or movement. So, if we're doing a lot of sitting, each meditation period can be anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes to an hour, depending on the retreat. So we could say that's a physical stillness, just sitting there. On retreat, we try to balance that with gentle exercises, as well as walking. It's a lot of walking. Some of it is even fast walking to really get the heart rate going, to breathe stronger, really get the body moving. We try to find balance between stillness and activity. We also try to balance our diet. So on retreat, it's an amazing opportunity to eat mindfully and be fully aware of how much food is enough. Eating just enough so that we have energy to do the practice, and being careful not to eat too much because that can interfere with our whole experience. The food can be quite tasty, so it can be a challenge not to eat too much. Because if we do eat too much, of course, one obvious problem is that we could gain a lot of weight on retreat. Some people find that if they eat too much, they gain a few pounds. But another problem of eating too much, an immediate consequence, is that during sitting meditation, we may feel drowsy. So if we eat too much, we feel drowsy as we're meditating, and it's not going to be very fruitful if that's the case. If we spend a lot of the time in and out of sleep or in and out of drowsiness. And we also learn how to find balance with our mind, which is, we could say, the most key point of intensive retreat. That we balance the body, we balance our activities so that we can have a more clear awareness, an alert, energetic state of being where we're clearly aware of what is going on in our mind. In our retreat, we may discover that there's a lot going on in the mind, a lot of thinking, a lot of emotional activity. And we may discover that this thinking is not, it's not functional thinking. Where thinking is not bad. We need to think in order to function in our daily lives. But sitting with ourselves, being present with ourselves on retreat, we can discover how so much of that thinking is just a kind of chronic, cyclic thinking where we're either worrying about the future, regretting the past, or fantasizing about the future if it's something good we're looking forward to, or kind of longing for the past, for the pleasant things we experienced in the past. Or we may find that we just end up criticizing or judging everything that's happening in the present moment. Something as simple as just sitting in a room with nothing to do. We may find that we end up criticizing or evaluating others. This is my experience and the experience of many, many other people where, I was still surprised even on this retreat where I found this internal commentator, this internal voice coming up and kind of judging other people by the way they walked, the way they got a drink and maybe they slammed the cup down on the table, or when they walk with heavy footsteps and make a lot of noise. So I had this sort of little commentator that was getting annoyed, this sort of feeling of being irritated by other people. There was a little of that going on in my mind. This is after 20-something years of meditation experience. I still have these tendencies to judge and evaluate based on whatever standard I have. Since I've been on many retreats, that can be a challenge to be on a retreat as a student. When I've led the retreat as a teacher, I have the freedom or the authority to make changes to what's happening, how the retreat is being facilitated. As a student, I just have to go along with it. So that was one interesting thing for myself for this past retreat, noticing that judgmental mind is quite strong. So this practice on retreat is where we can really start to see or become aware of these patterns of thinking, which often turn into just this craving for things that we find pleasant, or an aversion for things we find unpleasant, or this critical thinking or critical voice that says what's good, what's bad, how things should be, how things shouldn't be, in a way that's irritates us or that agitates us. Because again, thinking is functional. It's important to think to make evaluations and judgments. But you may find that if you just sit with yourself, that there's a tendency to overdo it, to overthink and get lost in patterns of cyclic, problematic thinking. And that creates a lot of emotional turmoil, anger, or frustration, or sadness, you name it. The whole spectrum of emotion can be experienced on one retreat in great depth. On retreat, we choose a method, or we're given a method by the teacher. The retreat that I just went on was the method of focus is called silent illumination, 默照 in Chinese. And this method of silent illumination is a very poetic word. Sometimes it's described as serene reflection. It just means a way of being or a way of experiencing life which is silent. Meaning, when the mind is silent, it's not disturbed by things. And why is it not disturbed by things? Well, because we practice letting go of this judgmental mind, or what's called the discriminating mind, or 分别心. When we learn how this judgmental, discriminating mind has become such a problem, we learn to let go of it. We learn to just see, hear, feel, and experience every moment with freshness, without preconceived ideas and judgments. Illumination just means that we're clear about everything. We're clear about what's happening. We're clear about what's going on within our mind. So to go back to the example of people making loud footsteps, or just walking with heavy footsteps. With the practice of silent illumination, we're just clearly aware of the sound of footsteps. If our eyes are open when we're meditating, we can see the people walking by, we can see their feet moving, we can hear the sounds, but it's just that. There's no need for judgment or comparison. It's just feet moving. It's just the sound. And even the words feet moving or people, we don't need to think, we don't need to label what we experience all the time. We could just experience it as completely fresh in the present moment without any commentary, without any internal explanation. Seeing, hearing, feeling, touching, tasting. And even if a thought comes to mind, that's just a thought, passing thought, no problem. So being clearly aware of what's happening is illumination. Not reacting to it, not judging it, is silence. With this kind of practice, we learn about the condition of our mind. We learn how to let go of the problematic thinking and reactivity to things that we've developed. And as we let go, we find ourselves naturally free. We find ourselves clearly aware of what's happening, but just not bothered by things. And what's interesting is that when our mind is not bothered by things, we naturally also have a more compassionate attitude. So if we see people walking with heavy steps, or we see people and they happen to be in a position of, a posture which is showing pain or discomfort, or they're making noise out of pain or discomfort, a compassionate attitude can arise within us, compared to the more judgmental attitude of, why are these people doing this? These people are lazy, which, can arise. It's just we see, and we know that someone's suffering, and we feel a sense of care for them and concern. But on retreat, we're not paying attention to other people. Of course, we may see other people, we encounter them, but the point is not to pay attention to others. The point of retreat is to really just be with ourselves. And with everyone practicing that, everyone being with themselves, being fully present to their own experience, and yet still being courteous to other people, still hold the door for people. If somebody needs help for some reason, of course we can help out. But this experience of being fully with ourselves, aware of our condition, finding balance in our body and mind, and then developing a deep awareness of our psychological tendencies, which lead to suffering, we can gradually let them go with the help of a method of practice. So this is the practice on retreat. Retreat is really to develop self-awareness and to develop, we can say, wisdom. Wisdom meaning we learn how not to cause trouble for ourselves. And compassion, where we learn and we can experience genuine concern for other people. Meditation retreat is not for seeking experiences, special experiences, or altered states of mind. That's not the purpose of retreat, although some people have that kind of attitude. The purpose of retreat is really to train ourselves in self-awareness so that when we go back to daily life, we're even more prepared to deal with the challenges of daily life with a mind that's more stable and clear. Clear meaning not full of noise, not full of distraction. With a stable and clear mind, we can deal with the challenges of life, and we can also just enjoy life so much more because we feel at ease. Isn't it true that many of us have a lot of the material comforts in life, but we just don't feel at ease? We may experience a lot of anxiety or sadness. Through intensive practice on retreat, we can discover some of the sources of that anxiety or the sources of that sadness and be able to use a method to resolve them, so that when we return to daily life, everything is just more enjoyable because our mind is at peace. And we may find that we don't need to seek out pleasure so much. Of course, we can still have fun, but we don't necessarily need to seek out pleasure in a way that's exhausting. If it's exhausting to go out super late, to party all the time, or to do so much on the weekend to try to have fun, to make up for the boredom of the work week, that can be exhausting. So it can be fun, but it's an exhausting kind of fun. Whereas if we can develop a deep self-awareness that helps us release and let go of the burdens of our mind, then everyday life is just enjoyable. Just having a walk, taking a walk, even having a meal without the distractions of a phone or TV. Just taking a pause to look out the window and see the trees moving in the wind, or to hear the sound of the cicadas. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. I can hear the cicadas chirping. That's it. I don't know if you can hear it. These little things of daily life, the experience of just seeing and hearing and then engaging with people, becomes so much more fulfilling when our mind is more at peace. So this is really the deep and profound benefits of intensive meditation retreat as I've experienced it. And I shared a lot in this video in the we form, because I'm speaking also from what I've heard of other people's sharing, other fellow students or students on the retreats that I've led. Many people share these common experiences and insights which really help improve the overall quality, inner quality of life. And I encourage you to try meditation retreat. Now, as a warning, it's usually better not to jump into a week-long or 10-day or longer intensive retreat. It's better to start with shorter periods. So a 1-day retreat, and then a 3-day retreat, 5-day retreat, 7, 10, to gradually experience what it's like. That's usually the safer way, and it's just easier to adjust to it as you get more familiar with the retreat itself, and as you get more familiar with yourself and with your method of practice. It's a much smoother transition to start with shorter retreats. And as far as where to go on retreat, well, if you're in the New York or tri-state area or Northeast, I recommend the place where I go as a student as well as a teacher, which is the Dharma Drum Retreat Center in upstate New York. And I'll put a link in the description. But there are also many other retreat centers, whether they're Buddhist or non-Buddhist. I recommend to check them out. Everybody has a different need, or you may find an affinity with a certain style of practice. So, just search retreat center in whatever state you're in, and take a look and see if it resonates with you. I think that meditation retreat is an amazing tool for developing self-awareness and for transforming the quality of our lives. So I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions or feedback, or you have experience yourself on meditation retreat, feel free to share. I'd be curious to hear of your experience, as well as to address some questions. So in the meantime, be well.